In home improvement, there's the right way to do things, and then there's the way you can afford. Sometimes the shortcuts work, sometimes they don't. And when they don't, fixing them can cost even more than doing it right from the start. This is a story of what was supposed to be my dream shop, what I should have done, what I could afford, and what I regret. Some choices aged surprisingly well, others not so much. If you're a contractor, you might want to look away, or at least go easy on me. And this video is brought to us by Squarespace. We're gonna get into where things went completely off the rails, but first I need to give you a little bit of backstory. We moved into this place about 8 years ago. The detached garage would become my new dream shop. We gutted it down to the studs so we could add an attic for storage. That attic allowed us to install a drop ceiling. The drop ceiling gave us space for ceiling LED light panels, which are perfect for even lighting for filming. We use white acoustical tiles to bounce the light, and it also deadens the sound of the loud tools. We added custom electrical in the walls. Each quad outlet is on a dual circuit, so running a tool and a dust collector doesn't trip the breaker. We got floor outlets, both 110 and 220, right where the tools need to go. In the walls, we added heavy rock wall insulation to keep the sound from leaking out and disturbing the neighbors. We also used a thicker 5/8" drywall for more sound isolation. I clipped the garage door track so the garage door is no longer usable, but that's okay. I couldn't fit a garage door and a drop ceiling with the available height that I had. And besides, all my tools can fit through a standard 36" door, and you should never build something that you can't get through a door anyways. And now, the most controversial decision I made 8 years ago. I carpeted my wood shop. Not just any carpet, commercial grade carpet tiles, like you'd see in an office or a library. The idea was it'd be easier on my feet and better for the sound. We're getting to the big regret and the problem I'm dealing with in a moment, but looking back, every single one of those decisions was the right call. The attic storage has been incredibly useful. The drop ceiling and the carpet, two of the best choices I have ever made. They've made a huge difference in sound control, and they're surprisingly comfortable to work in. I will go deeper into the pros and cons of having carpet in the woodshop at the end of the video. I also got really lucky with my electrical layout. Everything landed exactly where I needed it. Though part of me now wishes I'd run the 220 outlets on the outside of the walls to make future changes easier. And absolutely no regrets on clipping the garage door track. I'll show you later how I hid the garage door and made it into storage. Everything else was great, but here's what I didn't do. And it turned out to be a huge headache. The concrete floors in this garage were extremely uneven. Higher up in the middle, huge slopes on the outside, big dips and valleys. It's hard to explain how bad the floors actually were. I got quotes to have them professionally leveled at that time, but it was way outside my budget. I was already spending a ton of money on the remodel. I figured the unevenness wouldn't be a big deal, and I assumed I could just cope with it. But it turns out I couldn't. The floor is like a pitcher's mound in the middle and doesn't just slope towards the garage door like you'd expect. It actually drops down at all the walls. It's been disorienting to walk on. Getting the benches level has been a nightmare, and filming even harder. Every time we'd move the tripod, we'd have to re-level the camera every single time. So after 8 years of this, I have had enough. It is time to fix it. I didn't know how many problems I was going to run into, so I didn't film the process. Honestly, I didn't think this was going to be a big deal. I only started documenting things when the challenges started piling up. So I apologize. I don't have great footage of just how bad the floors were before we started. I did throw up my DJI action cam to capture some of the fixes. Not for YouTube originally, it was just meant for my own archive and maybe a little behind the scenes to share with my Patreon. It's gonna be really hard to show off on camera, but where I'm standing right here is probably a 2 to 3 inch drop from right here. And then there's a little divot there. There's a really, it really grades right here, probably a couple inches within a matter of a couple of feet. And I'm not sure why it was like this. Maybe it's tree roots or whatever, but this is supposed to be like a normal garage. You would pull your car in here, and I think you would want the water to go that way, you know, if you came in from a snowy day or if it was raining. But the way it is now is if you pulled your car in, all the water would go to this side and then this back wall. Definitely would not go back out. And it's so weird that now that everything is moved out, it doesn't seem as pronounced as it did when everything was in here. And I now kind of see why I didn't get the floor leveled when I first moved in, because it didn't seem like a big deal. But as soon as I get the table saw in here and all the tool benches around the corner, and where the walkway is, like right here, this is where the hill is. And so when you're walking from tool to tool, it is very uneven. It kind of screws with your brain a little bit. You never feel quite right. And then we have to, anytime we move the camera from one area to another area, we have to re-level every single time. The more I went through it, the more I realized there are some real lessons here. Either that, or at least a few moments that'll give you a good laugh at my decision making. Again, take it easy on me. There's still a lot of what I should have done versus what I actually did coming up. I got a quote from a local company called Foamworks for $3,500 to level the floor. So basically what they do is they drill a hole into the slab and inject expanding foam underneath to lift the concrete. At the time, I thought $3,500 was a great deal to finally solve all of my floor problems. But like any great infomercial, but wait, there's more. They warned me up front that because the original pour was so uneven that this wouldn't make the floor perfect. There would still be dips and valleys in certain areas, especially where the concrete was poured poorly. So the goal was to get the 4 main quadrants of the shop closer to level so I could handle the rest on my own afterwards. They told me the whole job would take about a half a day. The biggest obstacle wasn't the leveling. It was getting all the tools and benches out of the shop. These things are insanely heavy. Honestly, what kept me from doing this sooner, but with the help of my brother and 2 full days of moving things, we cleared out most of the shop. The joiner, planer, table saw, and bandsaw stayed in place, but we propped them up on mobile bases so we could roll them around. Everything else went into Kelly's garage until we ran out of space, and then we started tarping things and moving them outside. The timing of this was a little tricky. We had to work around my video schedule, and we had to make sure the weather wasn't going to be too terrible since some things were going to live outside for a few days. Finally, the day arrived, and Foamworks got to work. They started in the back of the shop where things were going smoothly. They told me the slab was about 4 to 6 inches thick, which seems to be pretty normal for a garage. And then when they got to the middle of the shop, it's where it got a little weird. It turns out the concrete there was 10 inches thick. They were still able to drill down below it, but it was much thicker. So it looks like the slab was poured on top of an older slab, possibly a shed, but who knows? I think that explains why there's a huge mound in the middle and why the original pour was so uneven. I don't own a laser level, so I didn't even realize that the center of the garage is actually higher than the door thresholds. This is Jermaine, and he's helping me level the floors in here. Tell me exactly what you're doing and what you did.
All right, so essentially we drill these 3/8 holes all throughout the slab. After that, we get this GX7 gun. We've got resin and poly that mix together at the end of the gun, and they mix to create the rising foam. So we pump it all throughout the slab to get these slabs to lift back up after they've sunken. And after that, we'll clean up this dust, and then we use some concrete patch to patch all these holes so looks like we were never here. And then stabilize all throughout. Even when we don't want to lift, we want to stabilize it just to make sure that the concrete doesn't settle anymore. Yeah, that's pretty much it for lifting concrete.
So, and what we've learned is there may have been a pour on top of a pour in the middle because it was way thicker.
Yeah. Certain spots in this workshop, concrete seemed 10 inches thick. So on the outskirts of it, there's a normal slab, normal 4 to 6 inches thick, which is typically what they do. but towards the middle where the pour is a little uneven,
Yeah.
you drill down, you feel like you're all the way through, and then you drill a little bit further and you hit another slab. So you got to go through all of that to get the foam to lift the slab. So, yeah.
And for some weird reason, like we knew this going in that the floor wasn't going to be perfectly flat because the original pour wasn't perfectly flat. So there's still a little bit of dips and valleys.
Yep.
But we're gonna level that out ourselves. So
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
So even though they were able to lift up the edges of the slab, it was never going to bring it up to match the middle. And near the garage door, they lifted it up as much as they could, but eventually the building started to shift, and that's the danger zone. Once the building starts moving, doors stop closing properly. So they stopped there to avoid bigger structural issues. Like I said, they warned me, and they were right. It's better now than it was, but nowhere near flat. Our house was built in the 50s, but I believe this garage was added like 20 years ago. And it looks like whoever poured the concrete just did a terrible, sloppy job. I knew that once Foamworks was done, I was going to lay down Dricore panels to start leveling the floor out even more. I had stacks of it ready to go sitting in Kelly's garage. Once they finished their part, it was time for me to take over. So this is where the regrets really started to sink in. Of course, I should have done all of this when we first moved in 8 years ago, but at the time, I simply couldn't afford it. Looking back now, I kind of wish I just jackhammered the entire floor and repoured it from scratch. But there are a few problems with that. First, I've already gone too far down this path and I want to see it through. Second, that kind of demo and repour isn't in the budget. Not back then and not now. And third, there's electrical buried in the slab, and redoing that would be a whole new level of expense and complication. So even if I wanted to, tearing it all out and starting over just isn't realistic. At this point, I still had no plans on using concrete leveler, but once I saw how bad some of the dips and valleys were, I realized I needed to do something. Without it, there'd be huge voids underneath the subfloor, and that wasn't going to cut it. So I picked up 7 bags of concrete leveler and used it to fill the worst of the low spots. Each 50-pound bag cost about 34 bucks, and I maxed out at about 7 bags, and that was the most I could justify spending. And honestly, all I could physically and mentally manage. Like I mentioned earlier, the middle of the floor is higher than the door thresholds. That means I couldn't do a full leveling pour across the whole shop even if I wanted to. In some areas near the walls, it would have required several inches of leveler, thousands of dollars in material alone. And when you get that deep, you have to add aggregate to the leveler. So now after all of this, the floor is better, but still far from perfect. The mound in the middle is still there, but it's more gradual. The sharp dips and valleys are mostly gone and the slope is less noticeable. It's not flat, but it's functional. All along, I had planned to add the Dricore subfloor panels. The Dricore comes in 2 foot by 2 foot sheets of OSB. It's tongue and groove, and then there's a vapor barrier on the bottom. It's designed to make the floors feel warmer, add some insulation, and be easier on the feet. I also assumed it would help smooth out the remaining slopes in the floor and make everything feel a little more gradual. The install was actually super easy. The panels are all tongue and groove, and they cut easily on the table saw, which I still had in the shop. So I was able to do the whole thing by myself in about 3 to 4 hours. But man, I was so sore afterwards. I was honestly more sore after doing this than moving everything out of the shop. I did make sure I had proper expansion gaps all along the perimeter, and I had to purchase a specialty tool called a pull bar to get it installed along the edges. While adding the Dricore, I did shim around the edges to try to get rid of the slope as much as I could. It was all going to plan until it wasn't. The bad news is it wasn't going to work. And this was devastating. After spending $1,200 on 170 panels, I realized the floor had a bounce to it. Maybe that's fine for a basement rec room, but in a filming studio, it's a deal breaker. If I had the camera set up on a tripod and walked nearby, the whole shot would bounce with every step. The reason is the concrete slab still wasn't flat. I had shimmed as many low spots as I could, but it just wasn't enough. There's a trick where you can drill into the Dricore and inject low expansion foam like you'd use for a window and a door. And I tried that, but it didn't work for me. I think the gaps were just too large. I kind of knew that this was a possibility, but I was really hoping this wouldn't happen. I think this happens a lot in DIY projects. You take a shortcut, you hope the shortcut works. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you just deal with it. I was really hoping it wouldn't come to this, but the only solution is to add another subfloor on top of the Dricore. Yes, that is subfloor on top of subfloor. It turns out it's not all that uncommon in tricky remodels, but I was really hoping to avoid spending another $410, but here we go. So to fix the bounce once and for all, I added 4x8 sheets of OSB on top of the Dricore. This helps distribute the weight more evenly across the floor and eliminate the bounce. On the worst spots, I also screwed the Dricore panels directly into the concrete as recommended by Dricore. It does feel like that would break the vapor barrier, but surprisingly, it is what the company suggests in cases like this. So I just went for it. In case you're wondering, I don't own a hammer drill. I just use a regular drill for this. Not recommended when drilling in the concrete. Adding OSB on top of the Dricore also made the floor slopes feel a little more gradual, and it gave me one last opportunity to shim most of the problematic edges, except near the doorways. I couldn't shim near the thresholds, or the second layer of the subfloor would have risen above the door clearance. The smoother side of the OSB says it's meant to go down. I believe it's prepped so it can be glued down to the surface. I chose to have the smooth side up because I am going to use peel and stick carpet. And I think the peel and stick would stick better to the smoother side. This part of the project actually went really fast. Laying down the OSB only took a couple of hours, and finally the floor felt solid. It was at this point I was finally starting to feel relieved, like I could see the finish line. The floor shop was solid, the bounce was gone, and the next step was to carpet my wood shop. Yes, carpet my wood shop. But before we get to that, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. One thing this whole floor saga reminded me of is how much design really just is problem solving. Every decision, whether it's how to flatten a bad slope or how to layer materials, becomes part of the final solution. That mindset carries over into how I run my business. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that helps you build your online presence with ease. Whether you're sharing a portfolio, selling custom work, or starting a blog, their beautifully designed templates and intuitive tools let you focus on what you create without getting bogged down in the tech side. Their design intelligence tools help you get started fast with a site tailored to your goals and your style. And if you're selling your work, Squarespace Payment gives your customers multiple ways to check out, all built right in. I've been using Squarespace for over a decade now, and it's made running the business side of my creative work so much smoother. So head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/makesomething to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now, let's get to the part that confused every woodworker when I did this the first time. I'm putting carpet back in my shop. Installing carpet in the shop 8 years ago was one of the best decisions I have ever made. It makes the space way more comfortable on my feet and to my ears. Vacuuming doesn't take that much longer than sweeping, and the little extra time it does take is absolutely worth it. I've been asked hundreds of times over the years if I regretted putting carpet in a wood shop, and the answer is obviously no, because I'm doing it again. You wouldn't believe how much it helps with the sound. I'm one of those people who works on the floor a lot, and so it works great for that too. Just makes it more comfortable. There are also been a few unexpected benefits of the carpet. We can easily move tools and benches around using carpet sliders. And we have learned that putting carpet sliders on a tripod gives us super insanely smooth dolly shots. Of course, you can do this with wheels on a tripod, but the wheels all then have to get oriented in the right direction. This is just easier. It's just one of the unexpected benefits of having carpet in the shop. The first time the carpet was installed, the contractor did it. I went to the store, I picked out the most dense, low profile commercial carpet I could find, and they installed it using adhesive directly on the concrete. This stuff was $4.40 a square foot, and it held up great. In fact, removing the carpet was probably the hardest part of this whole process. That adhesive was so strong and the carpet would rip as we pulled it up. This time, I ordered carpet online and I didn't get to see it or feel it ahead of time. And I went with a cheaper option of 84 cents per square foot. $4.40 a square foot, 84 cents a square foot. So this is labeled as commercial grade, but only time will tell if it will hold up. This is also peel and stick, which is a big change from the adhesive install last time. I'm not sure how well that'll stay down, especially moving heavy tools around, but the upside is that they're easy to replace if needed, and at this price, it's not that big of a deal. The new tiles are darker than the original, which I think helps with the overall vibe of the shop. This feels really good on my feet, so I'm hopeful. The problem is because I didn't get to feel and see this, and I bought it online compared to this takes a little bit longer to vacuum than this. I found that the wood chips kind of stick to this a little bit more. And my brother Daniel, who does most of the vacuuming, is going to have to deal with that. I'm sorry, buddy. But I went with the cheaper option. If it becomes too much of a hassle, I can replace them one at a time with the heavier grade stuff. So we're just gonna see how it works. This is how a lot of home improvement projects go. You hope the cheaper option works, and then you deal with the consequences later. You know, like I mentioned earlier, the carpet helps so much with the loud tool sounds. There's no reverberation in here. It feels like a recording studio when you walk in here. It's very dead sounding. The drop ceiling tiles are acoustical tiles meant to control reverberation. We got the very dense insulation in the walls with the very thick drywall, and then we got the carpet, and then the subfloor that we added, the 2 layers of subfloor, should also help with the sound. So I think it's actually going to be even more quiet in here than it was before. It's not perfect, but it is so much better. You can still feel a slight slope in some areas, but it is what it is, and I am done complaining about it. I'm never going to speak of it again. Earlier, I mentioned the garage door. It's still there, so it looks like a normal garage from the outside, but the tracks have been clipped. That garage door, it's not insulated. So I built like a temporary, very hastily made wall, and that's filled with insulation, and that keeps the cold out. Where the drop ceiling ends right here, I installed pocket door track, and these panels, it's just walnut plywood that just runs along the track. It's not fancy, but it works, and it helps hide my mess. So I have these racks here to hold all of like my little scrap pieces, currently all covered with shrink wrap because we had to move it outside and move it back in to work on the floor. But yeah, I use the panels to hide my mess. I don't want my videos to be about tools. I want it to be about the projects and the creative process. So I don't have tools on the wall, and I hide them in drawers and behind panels. This is my creative space. So when I walk in here, I want it to feel calm, clean, and inspiring. So I don't want it to look like a wood shop. I want it to feel like an artist studio. So I had my buddy Matt Taylor paint this mural on the wall here. This is where my miter station goes, and I am actually rebuilding all of my shop furniture. I've got a brand new shop furniture design that I'm calling 2.0. The reason I need to redo all my shop furniture is my old furniture had a depth of 30 inches. This new furniture design is going to have a depth of 24 inches because I need a little bit more floor space for cameras and tripods. But this new shop furniture design now has a toe kick and doesn't have a face frame, so you don't have to build out the edges for drawers. These new tool benches should go together a lot quicker. This is going to be the next video. I designed everything in Fusion and made every parameter fully parametric, so I can go in and adjust the number of drawers, the depth of the toe kick, the height, the width. every detail instantly. And I'm really excited to show you how all of that comes together in the next video. That is gonna wrap it up. I know things weren't done in a traditional way or maybe even the right way, so please take it easy on me. You only have what you have to work with. So, you know, budgets rule everything. So we'll see you in the next video where we build a new miter saw station. As always, be safe, have fun, stay passionate, and make something.